We got her! Hi, Randy.
Well, hello.
It's thinking.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Wartrain here. Do me a favor guys, if you're new, please subscribe and click the bell down below so you guys can get notified of every time I upload videos just like this one. And if you guys enjoy the video, do me a favor, please give it a thumbs up. But with that out of the way guys, today's video I want to talk about the Sega Dreamcast. Yesterday it was the 20th anniversary for this console, and it was an amazing console. If you were around when this system came out, you absolutely remember it. The ad campaign was just crazy for this thing. With the little swirl and the 99.99, that was everywhere. They definitely put some money into the advertisement on this console. And, you know, it was really sad to see that would wind up being Sega's last system. Sega was a great system maker. They make great consoles. I had a lot of fun playing Sega hardware as a kid. When the Sega Dreamcast came out, I was actually 19 by that time. And it's hard to believe it's been 20 years since then. But it was a great console, and it still is. And when it came out, you know, I didn't have one. You know, that was the weird thing. But I did wind up somewhat having one for quite a while. I actually had a friend that had a Sega Dreamcast, and he had a bunch of games for it, really good games. And, you know, I would play it at his house or whatever when we'd hang out. And then one day he just out of the blue asked me if I wanted to borrow his system, and I just was like, huh? I didn't understand. Okay, where's the joke here? But no, he was serious. He let me borrow his Sega Dreamcast and all his games, all his peripherals. I couldn't believe it. I mean, he let me borrow it for a long time too. I want to say probably almost a year. And that thing got some work put on it, man. Let me tell you, I was, because I wanted one, I just didn't have the money at the time to buy one. So I was so excited, and man, I had a lot of fun. Some of my other friends would come over, and we would just play that thing all day, all night, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, there were some great games too, but playing games like Crazy Taxi was one we played a lot. Sega Bass Fishing. I don't know what it was. I think it was it had a controller that looked like a fishing reel, and it would vibrate, and you'd cast it. I mean, it was amazing. At the time, I just was blown away that they had something like that. You know, because this is before Wii motion controls and all that kind of stuff. So that was like my first time I used a peripheral that actually made you feel like you were, you know, doing what it was you were doing in game like that. Because that thing worked great. And, you know, it would vibrate when you catch a fish. And, you know, it almost made you feel like you had tension on it, reeling it. It was great. Absolutely great. I never got into fishing games. That was the only one. Sega Bass Fishing was absolutely amazing. And at the time, I was blown away. And I'd play it now if I had it, because it was just that much fun. And Soul Calibur, wow. When I played Soul Calibur back then, and just from playing that, I became a complete fan of Soul Calibur ever since then. But when I played it on the Dreamcast, I was blown away. And seeing Soul Calibur and Crazy Taxi, those two games right there, told me that the arcade was over. That was the end of the arcade period. And it really was. The arcades pretty much fell pretty quick after that. Because at that point, then too, you had PlayStation 2 that came around that time. So, yeah, it was pretty much over for the arcade. Yeah, and you could just see the writing on the wall because we had a House of the Dead for the Dreamcast. Another one was amazing. To have that at your house back then was just, it was unreal, especially because, these are games that you would play in the arcades and you never thought that they would be that good of a version of that to bring to your house, and that was doomed for the arcade because why would you leave your house when you could do that at home and you don't have to keep pumping money into a machine, especially by that time the cost of arcade games had gone up. It wasn't 25 cents or 50 cents. A lot of the games were like $1. The price of everything always goes up. So why would you, pump 50 cents or $1 for one play into a machine when you could just sit on your couch and play possibly better quality games or ports of a game that you would play in the arcade? Because Soul Calibur was amazing on the Dreamcast. Like I said, that for me was the absolute turning point. That I was like, wow, consoles are. I mean, this is the end for arcade. I mean, consoles are just we're at that point now, and it was true. And that was the first one to offer online gaming. And that was the start of that too, and just the idea of that was pretty amazing. But back then it wasn't as, not like now where everybody has access to play online. Back then it was like you had a phone line, your modem or whatever, you're plugging that in, and you can't talk on the phone unless you have separate lines. But a lot of us had it where if you were playing on the computer or online or whatever, then you couldn't talk on the phone because it was busy if somebody called. You could be missing important phone calls. So it was that was a little touchy. So thank God they sorted that out over the years. But yeah, now, I mean, you have access to all this online stuff at any time, pretty much anywhere. It's in your pocket with your phone. I mean, you're pretty much connected to everything by your phone now. And back then, I mean, just the fact that, this did that was pretty amazing. And it was absolutely revolutionary. And after that, some people even called Xbox like the Dreamcast too. And in a sense it was because Sega gave a lot of those games over to Xbox, that since they weren't making hardware anymore. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good thing to see that the Dreamcast went out on, or Sega went out on such a high note with such a great console, because the Dreamcast is still a great console. They're still making games for it today. Unfortunately, there was exploits in it with this mill CD, so people were able to exploit it and just rip games. And back then, that stuff was a huge deal. Just like burning CDs. I mean, everybody was burning CDs because this was before you would just, just download stuff. It wasn't all about streaming and all that. It was about just ripping CDs. I mean, or making copies, or, I mean, that stuff was everywhere. People would just hand me copies of, a CD album of whatever band, here, I made this, you could get like all the new music. So just the fact that was happening with music, it was also happening with games and anything else because it was so new and exciting. People didn't know how to act. It was the wild, wild west. The internet was such a wild frontier back then, hard to believe now because it's totally different. There's lots of things in place, lots of services, But back then, a lot of these services didn't exist. So, pretty interesting, and I just wanted to touch on it. I seen some videos with people talking about it, and I just wanted to tell the story of, like I said, my friend. His name was Lewis. I doubt he'd be watching this, but if he ever does, thanks, Lewis. That was really cool of you, and I had a lot of fun. Like, he just gave me a stack of just great games to play. I mean, I can't even remember them all, but he had a lot of them. And that's why I was so blown away that he let me use this stuff. No questions asked. I guess he just had a lot of other games and he was busy working. He didn't have a lot of time. And, he knew I liked gaming. So I was like, here, man, check this out for a while. You probably play it more than I do. So I was all for it, Definitely wasn't complaining. I know it hurt giving it back. It was like, but I gave it back to him, and I was like, hey man, thanks a lot. I had a lot of fun with that. But those are my memories of the Sega Dreamcast. If you have any memories, let me know in the comments. I'm definitely interested to see what people, what their memories of this system was, because it was a great system, and like I said, it still is. And just looking at these, pictures up on screen here, it brings back a lot of awesome memories of this system. Like I said, just the advertisements alone were crazy for this thing. I mean, Sega was just so big back then. It was crazy, and it's hard to believe that they fell as hard as they did and just dropped out of the hardware business. It's just crazy to think if you would have told me back in 1995 that they're in the next 6-7 years, Sega would be totally done, and it would be Nintendo and Sony and Xbox, which was Microsoft, I would have had a hard time believing you. But here we are, and it's still Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft Xbox. So pretty crazy stuff. But it shows you how times change, show you how systems change, the internet changed, and how gaming has changed. But thanks for watching the video, guys. I really appreciate it. Like I said before, if you're new here, please subscribe. I try to put content out like this every day. But if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. But thanks for watching again, guys. That's the video. I'm the War Train, and I'm out. Have a good night, guys.